I can see that Frank de Tank's in there, Jamie Buffamont, Life of Crested Gecko, Cassie Sattler, and Azur, and Sherry, and Sean, and Bottled Earth. Cool. So, Cassie, the one who was just saying that she will be able to catch the recap, had a question on Patreon, and it was about how I pack isopods. So I'm going to show that, and I apologize, Cassie, that I'm a little bit behind on that, to put it mildly, but I am going to do that. Things have been so crazy lately that I just haven't been as organized as I would like to be, so that's part of my problem, but I am going to address that. So basically, let's start out. I get these boxes. I buy these from TSK, the snake keeper. It's called this TSK Supply Inc., I believe. And Snake Keeper is the long form of that. They are a company that's close to me. I can get these basically overnight shipped for the price of just normal shipping because they are right close to me. They're in a town is about an hour and a half away, or hour and 45 minutes away, something like that. So get these boxes. Start out with. They come with the pre-cut polystyrene. I'm not environmentally a great fan of polystyrene, but it's one of the few approved types of insulation that is permitted for shipping live animals because it is such a good insulator. So it is what it is, I guess. So they come with the pre-cut ones. The boxes come unassembled, and then you just tape the box together, and then you put, the four sides are a little bit shorter than the one that go on the top and the bottom. Then I add a little bit more padding, of course. I'm reusing here. You want to pack it pretty nicely so nothing bounces and jiggles. Got some isopods here. These are some Lotto Mix. They are going to Missouri, I believe. So I think they're the only package going to Missouri tomorrow. So if this is you, you know who you are. Lotto Mix going to Missouri. Pack it pretty tightly. I'm going to put a cool pack. Actually, I did that backwards, so hold on a second. So you make sure everything's nice in there, and you give some good insulation so it's not going to jiggle, but of course you want to make sure it's not pressed down too tightly. That's important. And then time for the cold pack. Now, this particular case, I am using a cold pack that I made myself with polyacrylamide crystals, which are basically the water crystals. Hold on. Going across the room. If you notice a big buzz, that's because I'm charging my iPad because I forgot before. Water storing crystals like these are the same crystals that are sold in pet stores at a huge markup, pre-hydrated, for crystals, for crickets and stuff like that. Same thing, polyacrylamide crystals, and they are sold for use. I bought these online, but you can buy them at garden store and stuff too, dry, and then just soak them in water for about 6 hours before you use them. And that's what I'm using here. The advantage of this is that even if this bag breaks, the worst thing you're going to get is some polyacrylamide crystals. You're not going to get a leaky box or a leaky anything. That's how that works. Of course, because this package is going out tomorrow morning, I'm not going to keep it in here overnight because that would be wasting, much of the use of the cold pack. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes, and I'm going to put it all back in the freezer until tomorrow. But then you wrap it up. I think I'm going to need a bigger piece, but for demonstration purposes, it's probably fine. I wrap it up a little bit, and then put it in here. Make sure it's in there, but you don't want to crush the isopods, of course. And you want to make sure there's enough room for everything. So you just have to kind of balance that. Put this cover on. Next comes the permit and the sheet that goes with the permit. So this is the environmental awareness sheet from APHIS and the permit for the particular state where the isopods are going. And I always put that right up there. So close the box, tape it up, put the address on. Of course, there's no address on here because I don't want anybody's address out there in public knowledge, but this is where the address would go, of course, and tape it up, and there I go. That is basically how I ship isopods when it's hot. When it's cold, I replace that that cold pack with a heat pack. And when it's moderate, I don't do either, usually, if it's moderate enough. That's usually how I go, because a heat pack can do more harm than good if it's moderate. And there you go. That's basically, those are the basics, and I'll answer questions you might have. I see Pepe Rando, Sad Florence, Matthias, Moon over Miami, Azer, congratulations on your new dairy cows. Cool. Do I prefer recycled Jiffy bags to the packing peanuts? Is that Jiffy bag? Is that the one you're referring to here with the bubble wrap in it? I prefer it because it's reusing, but I've used other things too. So I'll use various items. So that's basically why I use them, because I'm reusing them. Scott, so good question. How does the cooling pack work? Basically, that it's the same as water ice, except that it is in polyacrylamide crystal, so it's not going to leak significantly. You'll get some condensation moisture maybe, but since it's wrapped up, that's not going to be a big deal. And because it's going express, which I'm only shipping express right now for several reasons, one being the post office is delayed somewhat, so priority is not dependable. And another one is that it's just too hot where I am to ship priority really safely, in my opinion. So that, yeah, that's how that works. And it works pretty well. I mean, for most situations, it's going to be cool at least by the time it gets there. It does depend on how long it stays cold. Does depend on a lot of things, including where it's going and how it's treated and that kind of stuff. So, Scott, my approximate temperature brackets. I usually don't ship if it's over 97. I think that's 97. It's right around there. And then if it gets cold, is usually not as much of a big deal, but I rarely ship in December and January except express. But I will ship with a heat pack, because the heat pack makes a big difference. And these insulated boxes, I'll ship in December and January express. But then the rest of the year, so basically September through November and February through June, well, into June, somewhere into June, I will ship priority if the weather's not crazy. And then right now it's too hot to ship priority. And like I said, there are post office issues too. Okay. So hopefully that helps. Some great questions there. I see that Zero Cool's in here. Tavian's World of Reptiles. Okay. So yeah, I don't mind the packing peanuts. They work fine. But, and I've used them, but I'll use this. I'll use whatever I have that's, I'm going to be reusing things, so I'm making less of an impact on the environment, I guess, is my, my deal there. That's what I try to do when I can. So, I'm going to set this aside. Like I said, it's not actually being packed today. That was just kind of a demo for Cassie. She was asking about it. I'm sure other people were curious about that as well. And it's going to vary a little bit depending on your situation. One thing that I wanted to show you, the isopods themselves, they're on damp paper towel. And I like this, and it works fine. Sphagnum moss works well too, and I'm probably going to amend my permits so that I can use sphagnum moss to pack them in. I can't currently do that because of my permit requirements. When I set up the permit, I applied for the permit with certain conditions, and those are the ones I agreed to. So I can't currently use sphagnum moss to ship them in, but I want to be able to do that. So there you go. Now, next, I am going to split a culture. So any guesses about which isopod species I'm going to split? Which culture? I'm not going to split the isopod species, of course. I'm going to split the culture. If you have any questions about which, any guesses about which species of culture I'm going to split, then you're welcome to put that in the chat. Pepe Rando, have I seen a brown A granulatum? I have not. I haven't worked a ton with A granulatum. I have had a culture. I don't currently have one, but I have had them before, and I don't remember seeing any brown ones in there. I should get some more. They're pretty cool. I do have a permit to receive them too. So actually, I'm splitting the culture, right? So I'm setting more of the substrate to the side. Okay. The first layer of substrate. And let's see. D. Skrilla, how's it going? Been binging your vids last few weeks, and just got into pods and peds. Question: do peds like protein as well? Millipedes, some millipedes will go after protein. Most, in my opinion, in fact, most of my experience, I should say, will go after protein. Some, they might not swarm it to the same degree as some of the more protein-hungry isopods, but they'll use it. Fish food is a big draw for most of them. Fish food pellets they'll eat. Some of them, like the Orthoporus genus, seem to be a little more protein hungry, and they'll even eat like insects that aren't even completely dead yet. So yeah, protein is a thing for millipedes as well, even though they're more dependent upon like rotting wood in their substrate and so on than most isopods tend to be. They do seem to go after their protein. So yeah, good question and welcome. All right, so Lotto Mix is a guess. Okay. Scott's Animal Adventures sold all of your Lavis colonies, Ocellus, and Bumblebee millipedes, not making room for more, but streamlining my Armadillidium and Giant Porcelion and boosting my magic setting. Cool. Oh, you're going to get a lot of magic potion. Awesome, Scott. I do like the magic potions. I felt like the first time I got them, they just really didn't thrive, and now they are thriving. I've got two different forms. I've got the Japanese magic potion and the Orange Dalmatian magic potion. I'm not sure about the where the Orange Dalmatian magic potion actually comes from, what line that is, if it's descended from the original American line magic potion or not, if it's a separate thing. It does have what seem to be enhanced yellow markings, which are a characteristic of the American line magic potion, and so I'm not sure what's going on there. It's kind of interesting. At any rate, but they're doing well, so I hope yours do well also. Okay, so Pepe Rando says splitting cows or zebras. DA Exotics, welcome. Let's see, what am I working on now? I need some calcium powder in the form of eggshells. Going in there, mix into the substrate a little bit. This is from, we have chickens, and I'll take the brown eggshells and add those to the enclosures and the substrate and whatnot. Seems to work well. Usually bake them first. Easier to work with, easier to crush when they're all dry. Not a necessity, I'm sure, but. Oh, Moon over Miami, you're close, because I'm really thinking I need to split my duckies soon. Or at least upgrade their enclosure to a new one. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to scoot some of the leaves over here. Grab some sphagnum moss. That's what I'm doing right now. That's why I'm gone so long. Apologize for that. Oh, you know what I do sometimes that's dumb? I put the moss on the side with the most ventilation, which I don't want to do. So there we go. Put some more substrate over there. And put the moss on the side with the least ventilation. Makes more sense. Sometimes I just surprise myself. Okay. And Scott's Animal Adventures, that's a good point. We mean animal matter when we say protein, but a lot of times there is vegetable matter that has quite a bit of protein in it too, so that is a good point. And depending on the type of goldfish food you get, yeah, it could be largely vegetable matter. The goldfish food that I use for mine is mostly protein, I mean animal protein. But yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Okay, so Scott's Animal Adventures, so you may have the Japanese line. That's cool. And Eric, howdy. You just got your first isopods from Reptile Expo, some Porcellio scaber pied. Excellent. Good species to start with. Very good species to start with, in fact. So congrats on that. Good one to go with. And Scott's Animal Adventures, that's a good observation. Yeah, I did get some really nice pieces of limestone recently for my Cubaris, and I would be adding those if I was doing that. So you're right. And I'm glad I'm not the only one, Scott, that does that. And let's see, Polarity is guessing Porcellionides pruinosus. Eric is guessing dwarf. Yeah, calcium carbonate works great too. Oh, yeah, Sean Meister. Mine loves spirulina too. Sometimes I'll just put pure spirulina powder. I've done this, put it in my colonies on like a piece of wood or something, and they'll just munch it up. So, has anybody been able to see which species I'm splitting here? Have you seen that yet? From the side? Curious to see if you have or not. Oh, you use the wafer form. Yeah. That can be good stuff. As long as it doesn't get sticky. Some of the binders can be sticky and cause problems, but as long as that's not happening, it's good. Okay, we got some good guesses here. I'm going to show you what I got. Here, let's put this lid back here. This is the species that I'm dividing. I check on my pods while I'm broadcasting, like now. Good to hear your canyons are getting an upgrade. And yes, these are Flavomarginatus. Porcellio flavomarginatus, a really fun species. So, and they're doing great. I mean, I got a lot of them in here. They're doing really well. So I'm going to split them out a little bit. Here I go. I'm going to take some substrate from this culture and start splitting them out. And they do look a lot like the Sevillas. These are a little bit smaller, well, significantly smaller, I guess you could say, than the Sevillas. And they also, but they are similar in some ways. They're very active, for one, and they're a fantastic little isopod, really. They are. They like to make sure they've got a dry area is important. They really like their dry areas. And this one, this is a pretty successful colony. I've had it for, when did I get this? I got it in December. Just, the small starter colony. And it has done well for me. I'm pretty excited about it. Pretty cool colony that's been doing well. So let's see. Oh yeah, expenses are one of the best. Do love my expenses. If I had to pick a favorite isopod species, that would be a contender. Not gonna lie. Yeah, the markings on these guys are hard to beat. They are gorgeous markings on the Flavomarginatus. Very, very clean, sharp patterns. Very clean, sharp pattern, so I love that. Purpose of splitting over larger tubs. Oh, okay. Well, in this particular case, Scott, why am I not just putting a larger tub in, which I could totally do, and I probably will, not too long next time I have to deal with this situation, is that I'm going to relocate some of these, and that is why. They're going somewhere else. So, not a species that I can ship, so I'm not shipping it anywhere, but that is why in this case. And still going. Let's see. As a refresher to Ashley N., which isopods spend more time active during the day and which are more active at night? Great question. I'm going to put, let's see. Now, a fun thing about this species is that they really like to be up on the sides of the container. Like if you have wood that's up along the sides, they love that. So I'm going to put another couple of pieces of wood in there up along the sides of the enclosure so that they have plenty of hiding spots and feel like they can get to drier areas where they want to be. So that's cool. So isopods during the day, I say Porcelionidae pruinosus, Porcelio ornatus, at least some of the morphs, Armadillidium vulgare, not vulgare, Armadillidium maculatum, the zebras. Those are some of the most day active species that I can think about, that I can think of. Excuse me. Porcelio flavomarginatus is actually a pretty good day active species too, when it comes to that. And let's see, I need a little bit more substrate in this other enclosure, don't I? Yep, I do indeed. I'll put some in there. You can see them crawling around there, maybe, hopefully. They are kind of an expensive species, to be honest, which is interesting. I'm not quite sure why they're so expensive. They're super cool, which, you know, I can't deny that, but they breed pretty readily. They're not gigantic. I think some of the coolest things they have going for them is that they are pretty active. They are very, very sharply patterned. I love that. They have a very sharp contrasting pattern that is just gorgeous, really hard to beat. And then they walk tall. They have long legs and they keep themselves up off the substrate when they're walking more so than some that hug the substrate. And so that's kind of unique and fun. So those are some things they've got going for them, definitely. But I'm not sure why they're as expensive as they are, considering how fast they breed. If they bred more slowly, I could see, yeah, okay. Supply and demand, you know, but not that they don't deserve, you know, all the attention they get. They do, and more probably, but just they've been breeding pretty steadily since I got mine. They don't like not having a place where they can dry off, so you need that in there with them for sure. Just breaking a piece of wood there for them to go in here. I'm going to throw in the other container that's off camera, so you're not wondering what the heck is going on back there with all that noise. Okay, well, I'm going to put a lid on here for my Flavomarginatus. Well, maybe I won't, because it's actually kind of fun to watch them mosey about and get used to their new enclosure, huh? I'm focused on the wrong spot, though. Let me dig down there. We can kind of look at those guys for a minute while we're talking about stuff. I'm going to put another lid on here. Oh wait, that's not the right lid. That lid has no ventilation. I prefer a little bit of ventilation on the top as well as on the side, so I have some ventilation on the top, and then you can see the inner part of the container has ventilation along both sides, one side a little bit more than the other, to create a humidity gradient. That's what I'm doing right there. Okay, so looking at the chat, And if you have isopods requests that I can easily put up here, I will, if you want to do that. Vulgaria are pretty day active too, that's true. And your night golds love the night, Sean. And there may be some states that don't allow flavomarginatus. Mine allowed me to get them shipped to me, but I can't ship them out. So that's kind of fun. You know, a lot of them are like that. I have quite a few that I can receive, but I can't ship, like Armadillidium gestroy. I have a ton of them. I can't ship them. Porcellio hoffmannseggi, Porcellio flavomarginatus, Porcellio ornatus. I can receive them. I can't ship them. Someone produced a new Porcellio dilatatus? What does it look like? I'm interested in hearing more about that. And Scott's Animal Adventures, it does depend a lot on where you are. You know, ventilation can vary so much depending on your location and your airflow in your house and, you know, lots of different things. So it's a good point. It's probably a lot more humid where you are, so I can get away with less ventilation in my spot. Oh, glad to hear it, Sean, that your night golds are doing well. Yeah, there's a lot of regulation of isopods in the U.S. It's a fairly new thing, but basically so many were coming in, and the APHIS, American Plant Health Inspection Station, said, we're worried about the potential of isopods as plant pests, and so they started regulating them. Really, Sean, they lost all signs of the gold color in your isopods? I'd like to know what happens with the next generations. Yeah, especially. Feather millipedes are cool. I didn't realize they were blind either. I don't think so. I don't think I had realized that, at least. So, D. Skrilla, would you say care for dairy cow and orange koi are similar? Yeah, I mean, I'd say pretty similar, not identical, but similar. Both also have A. nasatum and A. paraque and a few vulgari from my backyard. Nice. Well, orange koi and dairy cow are in same genus, of course, Porcellio, different species. But I would say that dairy cows, of course, get bigger and they're more prolific, so you're going to need to move them to larger quarters, and you're going to need to deal with that, you know, more prolific breeding and larger size a little bit. Other than that, they're very similar in care. They are not particular about how much ventilation they get, as long as they get, you know, a minimum amount, and they need. They're similar in terms of the foods they eat and how they're not huge on a moisture gradient. I give mine a moisture gradient, but they don't necessarily need as much as some other species. And do I think nasatum are an underrated species? Yes, I do, and I'm going to consider that a request to pull out some of my nasatum. Okay, I really like nasatum a lot. I do think it's an underrated species. I think very few people realize how cool they are, and I don't know why. I have like just, I think 3 different morphs right now, but I would happily keep more. I mean, they're cool. Let's see. So here's the first morph I ever got, and this is a very, this morph has been in the hobby a long time. I'm going to change the focus here so we can get down closer and look at these isopods a little better now that I have moved some things around. These are Armadillidium nasatum peach. I bought these from Orrin McMonagle back in the day, like 6 years ago or something. And how are they looking? Here's some. I actually had to take these off of sale because they were selling so well. I kind of ran low, but now they're reproducing again, and pretty soon I should be able to sell some. One nice thing about nasatum, and a reason why I think they're underrated, is that they breed more regularly than Armadillidium vulgare, which only produce, you know, fairly infrequently. They might produce a lot of babies at once, and they do, but they don't produce as frequently. So these tend to be more prolific overall. So definitely an underrated species. And like I said, this morph was produced originally by Orrin McMonagle, and I got them directly from him. about 6 years ago, I think. Still fairly early on in my isopod hobby. I hadn't been keeping them more than a couple of years or so at that time, I think. And let's look at these. These come from Alan John. He's not keeping as many isopods as he used to, but he used to have a lot. And this was one of the species he had, and we did a trade for some millipedes. And these are Armadillidium nasatum whiteout, but not completely isolated. As you can see, there are some wild types in there with them, which is cool. I'm going there regularly and cull them out, so that I ended up with just whites. But he sent me some hets as well as some whites in the initial group, and so been working on them, and they're actually producing pretty well. There are a few hundred in here. Fairly new culture still, but I like the contrast. They're just white, except when they've been eating things that aren't white, and then you see that. So pretty cool. So Evan, right, your Western coach whip. Oh yeah, dairy cows love snake sheds. I give them my snake sheds all the time. I give them to most of my isopods. Usually the Laevis or the Proceleonides pruinosus. They love it. Let's see. So that's definitely an underrated species. The new Dilatatus are white with brown markings. I'd like to see those. Those sound pretty cool. And let's see. These are my newest nasatum. You can see there's a ton of springtails in here and some babies. These are Armadillidium nasatum pearl, and I think there are two varieties of pearl. This is one of them. This one gets the little, some of them get the little flecks on them. Some of them don't. Like I said, you can see there's a few babies there and a ton of springtails. But I think I can see at least two different clutch sizes among the babies in there. So that's good. Not a huge culture yet, but it's getting, it's growing. I can see some in there. I like the tone on these. Pretty neat. And hello, Raw Nature. Oh, Scott, that's quite a good order you got there. Most underrated species might actually be nasatum. I think nasatum is one of my favorite underrated species. If I had a third Cubaris in mind, what species would it be? I'm not actively seeking out Cubaris just because of the permit issues. I can't ship them. But if I were to consider one, there are so many that are so cool. And I guess a lot of them are being classified as Nesodillo now instead of Cubaris. But I don't know, I like the lemon blues, I like the Shiro Utsuri, I like the spikies. There's so many cool ones. Let's see. What was the one I was going to look at now? I don't remember what I was going to look at. But let me show you. This one needs a ton more leaves because these guys go through leaves like nobody's business. So I'm going to take this one out. My son tosses leaves in here every week. You can see that there's some that have recently been tossed in here and on the lid and whatnot. But these guys eat all their leaves so fast. They all do, but this colony I think is kind of outgrowing this little 6-quart bin, and it's part of the deal. But you can see this was the experiment to see if I could cross milkbacks with oranges, and all I got were milkbacks and oranges. That's it. There's just a good number of milkbacks and oranges in here. No crossbreeding whatsoever. So that's what has happened. This colony was set up in August of 2020, so it's been, 10 months-ish. And that is not, I don't think it's going to happen. I did do an updated video on this at some point a few months ago. And there's another informal update. They're not crossbreeding, and I think there might be some misidentification of species going on. That is my my thought, but I could be wrong. Oh yes, those zebras, those are hard to stop from breeding, and it's awesome. And I think you're right, Scott. They need to reclassify them. The Bug Hub. The Bug Hub was the one who sent me the Armadillidium nasatum pearl. Thank you again. So that's kind of cool, Evan. Sometimes the worms can sort of overwhelm the culture. But, you know, you never know. So, Ashley, you have marbleized with your multi-lavis mix. That's cool. I have some that are like that in my Cali mix, which I will bring over right now, because why not, right? Okay, Irene C, good question. Let's see if the oh, that's getting a little moldy. That's not cool. That was not how it looked when I looked in here last time. I'm going to have to check out what's going on there. I don't want too much mold going on. Not good stuff. There's a bunch of the Cali mix. I get some marbly looking ones in here occasionally. But they're mostly either whites or wild types or sort of a peachy color. And the peachy ones, a lot of them look sort of milk-backy. And then some of the wild types look sort of pied. They're not quite wild types, they're just slightly pied. At least it's not fuzzy mold. That's not as bad, but still. I'm not too excited about that. I might have to see what's going on in here in this bin. I might need a little bit more ventilation. That's possibly what's happening. Let's check that out. Okay, so Pepe Rando, my high yellow project. Should we take a look? See if we can find some fun individuals in there. That's always a party. Let's see. There it is. I have 2 bins of that species. I've got my culls and then my normals. I mean, not normals, my high expression. This is my high expression bin right here. You can see some fungus gnats and whatnot. There's some nice adults there. Not all of them are high expression. The males aren't particularly high expression. There's some nice ones there. Oh, that's helping a little bit. I mean, helps me focus. There's a pretty nice one. I like that one. That's a nice one. So this is my project. There's some more down there. You can see if there's any. Oh yeah, we already looked at this, didn't we? This piece, there's some nice ones there. Yeah, I love the lavis. Sometimes I think I want to get a toad or something to eat some of the extras, but so Ashley, I know what you're saying. But I'm glad you like them. So they're coming along. They're coming along. Let's see. I'm going to go back into Patreon and see what kind of questions we've got. I remember that Ashley Ann had some questions. She said, are there any potential dangers to soil and substrate to humans or other mammals? There are all kinds of things found in the soil, from botulism to tetanus. And it's true that the soil can contain a lot of weird stuff, and some of it's not particularly good for us. If certain things get too wet, oh, I like that one. It's kind of a nice one there. It's got the little horseshoe-shaped markings. There are a lot of. There's a bacterium that can get on things like dead shrimp that I read about in Roy Monagal's book. It's a kind of a pinkish bacterium that's apparently harmful to humans, that can show up if you have dead materials in your isopod enclosures too long. So that's a thing. There are, of course, fungi, and I think one of the most, perhaps one of the biggest issues we might need to worry about in our cultures in general is if too much fungi are produced, especially for people who are allergic, then the spores, because there are people, allergic to molds and stuff, and I think most of those people would have a hard time keeping isopods just because there's going to be some of that floating around. Let's see. Look at their Porcelio ornatus high yellows. See how they're doing while we're here. So yeah, generally the consensus that you should wash your hands after messing with the isopod enclosures, of course, and I'm sure you do that already. But I haven't had any particular issues as long as I do that. I do think that bacterium, I'm not sure of the name of the bacterium, but something to watch out for. If you have mushrooms growing in your enclosures, which I have had in the past, I don't usually have that anymore. Sometimes with new cultures I'll get it for a little while, but most of those are not particularly toxic, like the yellow mushrooms that can sometimes show up. You don't want to eat them, of course. You just leave them alone, don't touch them and whatnot, and wash your hands if you do touch them, but they are not, it's not something you're going to have airborne issues with necessarily, unless you have to have a sensitivity to that. So those are some things that I think of right offhand. I don't know that there are, I'm sure there are a lot more things to think about in that area, but those are some things that I can start with. So Ashley, curious about the variants of your Armadillidium vulgare. Are they young or are they full-sized and still have variants? That seems to be a thing where you'll get a lot of variants with Armadillidium vulgare when they're younger, and then they grow out of it sometimes. Not always, but sometimes they do. And I was thinking that when Sean mentioned that the isopods he got from me had changed color and lost most of their markings, which is a little bit weird because that strain for me doesn't seem to do that as much, even though most of them do that. So curious about that. Cassandra asked, do you have any care advice or guides on Halloween crabs? Thanks as always. Well, do appreciate the question. Unfortunately, I have absolutely zero experience with Halloween crabs. Otherwise, I would be totally glad to help you out there. Not a species I've kept. I've kept various crabs, a few different species of true crabs, I guess. I think. Have I kept true crabs? I think so. And hermit crabs. Yeah, I've kept both, but not Halloween crabs, so they are interesting though. And Sad Florence, Scott, oh, that's not to me. Scott's Animal Adventures, tips for Bolivari. That is not a colony I've kept yet. I haven't kept that species yet. Predatory mites bad for isopods? Not necessarily. I have had, I don't know if I have them anymore, but I've had predatory mites with the isopods. They don't seem to cause a problem. They can decimate springtail populations. And that indirectly, I guess, could be an issue, but is that focusing okay on my isopods here? Can anybody tell me which species and morph and or locality I'm showing here? Play a little bit of guess the isopod. A lot of them hanging out. There any on? Yeah, there's some hanging out in there too. Not as many hanging out on the egg crate, but there are a decent number of them on the egg crate. Yeah. Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Morelia, hello and welcome. California Mix, good guess. Chocolate Maculatum, another good guess. Oh, Sad Florence watching in 240p, so it's hard to tell. Can't blame you there. Newt, Scamander, and Ashley N both got it. Newt's showing up a little bit earlier than me, just a little bit earlier, as Armadillidium vulgare Punta Cana. Kazumi Rose, hello and welcome. And oh, Raw Nature, when you buy springtails and the culture is infested with mites, yeah, they should make a meme about that. So yeah, these are definitely Punta Cana, and here's some more of them. There's a lot in the culture. You can see some of them are pretty light, some of them are pretty dark, and I think they vary. You know, you get little genetic bottlenecks in the stock, but they are definitely Punta Cana. Yeah, Ashley, I don't think that message came through. Okay. Yeah, they do look a little like, some of them look a little like zebras. Like, I could see that. Those markings, I love the markings on these guys. And the fact that a few of them are just wild types and some of them are close to wild types, but not quite there. And everything, You know, all these different variations. They're just fun. They are a fun locality. Not really a morph per se because they were wild collected like this, but they are fun. Probably one of my favorite Armadillidium. Hard to say which one is my actual favorite, but love them. Let's look at something else. What should we look at? Have we had any more species requests? I'm not sure. Okay, Scott's Animal Adventures. Would you say these are better visually than Santa Lucia? Some people say Santa Lucia. I speak Italian, I say Santa Lucia. So, let's see. I don't know. I have never kept that particular locality, and I would like to. This is another locality of Armadillidium vulgare, though. Any guesses on this one? Let's see what we got under here. Boom, look at that. Okay. So maybe the terms are a little bit different in the UK. That makes sense. So let's see. They do look like little jewels. Oh, Ashley, your message came through. Solid gray, brown amber, and dark gray. Brown with gold markings, high yellow, and albino. Wow, that's a pretty sweet deal there. That's nice. So these are gem mix right here. This is Armadillidium gem mix from 2 different sources. So yeah, I'm loving the colors on here. You can see there's some adults down there. These are all babies here, but there's some adults down there. Actually, when I put my culture together, did well for a little while, but I lost some, and then I lost more. Not sure what was going on there, but now there's a ton in there. They're babies, so they're kind of bouncing back. I just hope I didn't lose too much genetic variability. I might have to refresh it a little bit, because that would be super sad. You know what I mean? I love the variety in there. Then we're going to do another one. This is definitely a favorite. What do we got here? Who can name this one off? You can see some of the larger adults down there. That'll probably tip you off a little bit. Magic potions. This is Armadillidium vulgare Orange Dalmatian magic potion. A little bit different from some of the other magic potions because they often have rusty spots on them. And so some of them have the darker spots. Like see that one right there in the center of the screen? Some of them have some really dark spots. Here's a good one that has some dark spots on it, but some of the spots are rusty. See, and some of them are just black. So this is called the Orange Dalmatian magic potion for that reason. They're just black or gray spots, and sometimes they're rusty spots. And I really like this more if they get big. They get really kind of big, which is fun. And they've been line bred for the yellow, so there's a lot of yellow on them. And the yellow just really shines when there's no gray in the middle. You know, no gray or very little gray to dilute it, so to speak, so that it looks almost neon. Pretty attractive. You can see that there are loads of babies in here. They've been breeding really well lately. So yeah, I think the line of magic potions, the original line of American magic potions, didn't have any rusty spots and still doesn't if it's pure. But Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on with that. Let's look at this one. Somebody just asked about Gestroy, so we'll do Gestroy too. Let's take a look at these guys. These are fun. Another one of my favorites. If you want to name these, you're welcome to do that as well. So Scott's Animal Adventures, Gestroy are considered one of the larger ones. It's debatable whether they are the largest or not. Some people say that Granulatum is bigger. Some people say Officinalis is bigger. You know, you'll get people fighting about that, or at least debating it. Pardon me. So, oh, Eileen, you're joining in. I'm glad you're here. We'll be around for a few more minutes, so you won't miss everything. There's a nice one. Look at that. If I can focus on it. I'm not sure I can focus on it. Here, I'm going to take a sip of water. My wonderful wife just brought me some water. She probably heard me coughing from the other side of the house. So that helps. Feel a little better now. These are the Japanese line potions here. Oh, welcome, Julie. Glad you're learning about substrate. That's the way to go. Substrate is one of the most important components to an isopod culture. So starting from the ground up, as we might say, if we were going to make a dad joke, which I will try to refrain from doing. So I think that's great. And so you're welcome, Julie. And thank you for joining in. So, how long is my list of favorites? Well, Mr. and Mrs. Morelli, you got me. I could probably sit for... I have very few isopods that aren't my favorites. You're right. I admit it. So, it's hard to pick which ones are my favorites. I can pick some that are not my favorites. My list of isopods that are not my favorites is much shorter than the list of isopods that are my favorites, if I said that right. If I said that wrong, you know what I mean, hopefully. I love the spotting on this one. It seems a little reluctant to move, or maybe I'm just jiggling too much. But do like it. So, Ashley N. Last request, how are the baby snakes? Most of them are doing really well. Some of them have already gone to their new homes, and the other ones I've started contacting people on the list and confirming they want them, and working with getting Ship Your Reptiles set up so that I can ship them out via FedEx Express. I've got a bunch of boxes with extra thick insulating foam coming. They're on their way so that I can start shipping. Most of them are eating like champs on chopped pinkies. A few of them are still picky and will only take earthworm mixed with pinkies or live endlers or things like that. So I'm still working on a few of them, but by and large, most of them are taking the chopped pinkies just extremely well. And then there's just a few that are not doing quite as well. I would say I have 2 or 3 that are picky still and not taking food like they need to. They're taking food, but just not the foods I want them to take. Pepe Rondo, that is a good question. From one person described the difference between Japanese and the U.S. line to me. The U.S. line is descended from a line in Georgia that Kyle at Roach Crossing worked with. Jay Fiore was the discoverer, and they're sort of the co-creators of the line, I guess you could say, of the American Magic Potion. And it's the fact that they're white with dark spots, that's a simple recessive gene, but they were line bred also for the yellow to really stand out on them. And so that's part of where they're coming from. The Japanese line, as far as I know, was mostly just the recessive trait that leads to the dark markings like this one you can see. But there's also some yellow markings on there, but that's not terribly uncommon. It's not as widespread as it is on the American Line Magic Potion, maybe. Not as much coverage, not as much expression there. So Julie, you're hoping to lead to a bioactive for a tarantula. Nice. There are a few species that are really good for that. And fortunately, some of those species are really easy to culture and not particularly complex, so that is good. Let's see. So, would you ever limestone clad a bin to see how the cubaris react to a cave-style biome? Very out there idea. That's interesting. I'd be open to it if I had the space. That'd be kind of fun. I have some big chunks of limestone with lots of holes in them in my rubber ducky enclosure, and guess who loves that? That's the dumb question, I guess. They love it. The rubber duckies really love that. I don't have Armadillidium officinalis, but I do have Armadillidium gestroy. Nope, I just picked up the wrong bin. Sorry. Already looked at those guys. I'm trying to look at Armadillidium gestroy. Where's my other gestroy bin? I have a fresh gestroy bin here, but I should have like a crazy, yeah. Okay, this is a little bit more established bin. They're mostly young ones in here, but there are a lot of them. Decent amount of them anyway. So let's take a look at the gestroy. You can see them all messing about in the substrate there. Quite a few of them. And Porcellio spiky canary, have not kept that one beyond field marks. Sounds super cool. Am I going to keep one or two of the baby garters? Probably not this time around at least. Where is everybody hiding? There's like loads of them in here, but is this the right bin? Are they just all in the, well, maybe they're mostly in the moss, because it's a little dry in there, to be honest. Need to get that a little wetter. But I do love the Armadillidium gestroy, even if all of them are tiny here. Which invertebrates cohabitate well with other species? Patrick. Oh, well, thank you for joining in. Glad you were able to get on the stream. Let me see if I can hone in on these guys a little bit and you can get a better look at them. I see a couple of dead ones in there. That's not a good sign. I wonder if it was, the moss is still damp. The rest of the enclosure is really kind of dry, so I'm gonna moisten the moss a little bit. Let me get a little bit more water. That container's gone. And I'm going to moisten this other side just a little bit here too, because that is a little too dry for gestroy. They don't really like it super dry. So Patrick, what invertebrates cohabitate well with other species? Well, I'm going to say that out of all the species of different invertebrates that cohabitate well, the ones that stick out to me are the desert beetles with velvet ants. And I have several videos on that. Both some that are just on desert beetles, one or two that are just on velvet ants, and some about cohabitating that mention cohabitating them. So I would check those out. Those are some of the best, in my opinion, because you can keep lots of different desert beetles together with velvet ants, all of them together. So Julie, what species of tea would you recommend? Well, honestly, I have no experience with tarantulas. I have lots of experience with isopods, but none with tarantulas. Otherwise, I'd be totally happy to do that. But I don't have any. That's one of the species I'm not allowed to keep, or one of the taxa I'm not allowed to keep. Of course, tarantulas are many, many different species, but I'm not allowed to keep anything from the taxon that is commonly known as tarantulas. Let's see. Can I mix magic potion and zebra? My general advice would be, I would not. I would not. Because being different species, you're probably going to get some out competition. I actually have a video coming out on that soon that I'll expound on that concept. They're generally not, isopod species that are different are generally not compatible, unless they are, which is rare. It doesn't usually end well for one of them. So hopefully that helps. So what am I looking at here? I am looking at some Porcellio scaber lava. Check it out. I love, even the low expression ones are nice, but look at those babies. We got some serious high expression. When those grow up, those are going to be stunners, I think. So Eileen O'Donnell, no dumb questions. Can a springtail culture become overrun by themselves due to natural population regulation that happens? I've never seen it happen. That isn't to say it couldn't happen. If you're going to reach a point at some point where I think one of the limiting factors is going to kick in, whether it's oxygen or whether it's food. Something's going to kick in at some point, but I've never seen it. I think you can get to some really high densities, possibly higher than we tend to get here, before you reach the point where springtails are going to issue. So there's some really nice lavas in there, some larger ones. I have some of the largest Porcellio scabra in this culture that I've ever seen in my life, to be honest, right now. But some of these are the biggest Porcellio scabra representatives I've ever seen. So you're getting variation decreases in your lavas. That's interesting. So Scott's Animal Adventures, I'd love to see what happens over time. Because I think what happens sometimes in the hobby, and I'll talk more about this in my video that's coming out, is that people mix isopods and they do fine for a year. And people say, okay, well, it works. And then after another year, it doesn't work. So I would be really curious to see how that goes for you. Yeah, the lavas are really, they've been breeding well for me too. There's a ton of babies in there. Loads of babies. It's kind of fun to see. Let's see. So somebody asked for Cubaris. Let's see. There's some of the, you can see some of the Cubaris red tigers. There's a few Cubaris red tiger there. They tend to run really fast as soon as you start looking at them, unfortunately. But I really like the colors on these. Yeah, said Florence, you might want to do that. Just see if you can get some more variation. There's a couple more. There's a baby. A couple babies. One of those is really light in color. So there's a couple of those. What's that in the substrate? Oh, there's some fungus in there. I have to play with that one. That happens. Not exciting. It'll be interesting to see, as I know Porcellio get decimated by prognosis in the bio, then they get taken by dwarf whites. Yeah. Dwarf whites and Porcellio prognosis are about the most competitive isopods you can get. They tend to outcompete almost everything. Can't argue with that. One more group of isopods. I guess we're just about out of time, but I'm gonna toss these down. You can take a peek at them. See what we've got. Is anybody else getting pixelated video? On mine it's looking okay, but that's not always a good sign of what's actually happening. So it may just be bandwidth or something like that. Just thought we'd take a peek at the milkbacks. They are doing well. Morph mix of Lavis. Well, with the morph mix of Lavis, I'm not too surprised because they are so similar and because they are the same species. Well, maybe the same species, hard to say. But things like milkbacks and dairy cows together seem actually to be genetically compatible, from what I understand. And then the oranges seem to survive, although at a lower population rate, for longer than some others. And it gets a bias. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, unfortunately, if we're getting pixelation and stuff, maybe we should cut out. But thank you everybody for showing up and joining in. And John Sol Mateo, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm glad that they're helping out. And that's that's kind of my goal, to make sure that I can provide care information out there for whoever wants it, and help out. So I'm glad to hear it, that you're enjoying the videos. And sorry, Zachary, we're gonna have to cut out, and it's being kind of poor quality, but I appreciate everybody joining in. And Mario, I'm going to answer that question about springtails. Always jump in water. They do it. It's a thing. And I'll see y'all later. Have a great evening, or whatever time of day it is where you are, and stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch you next time. Catch my video on Friday.